Hello, hello, hello. Today we're going to talk about the update that's coming to console very soon, where we are going to get the Guild War system change. And it's basically where the guilds, if you want to declare war, you will have to have a mutual agreement. This is an interesting change. Personally, I think it's a little jumpy, in my personal opinion. I think that this change was made in the essence of PC culture and not really taking consoles culture into consideration. I think if there's one thing Pearl Abyss doesn't do very well, it's involving themselves inside the culture of the game. And I know that's very hard to do while trying to maintain an objective perspective, because once you immerse yourself in a culture, it's very hard to stay unbiased in situations. So it's kind of a tough thing to balance, and it's very difficult, honestly. And I don't know how they would even physically do that without, having to see the absolute disasters that go on within the game. But console culture is very much different from PC's culture. Probably the number one thing that I'm envious of when it comes to just culture in terms of PC versus console is that PC has this way to where they can set up 1v1s, 2v2s, 3v3s in a large scale setting. We used to be able to do that on console. We had a whole Discord for it. It was leadership Discord. And we would go in there and we would ask for, fair fights, 1v1s, and most of the other guilds would respect it and not really do anything crazy to be obnoxious or whatever. It was really cool, and I miss those days. I really do, because at least that was back when the game had consistent PvP content. It's pretty rough nowadays, if I'm being honest. When it comes to PvP, there's no consistency anymore. The GVGs are sporadic in times of if you're in castle, that's when it feels the worst, because then you have almost no PvP action whatsoever. Outside of castle, it depends on what guild you're in. If you're on a top end high level guild, the PvP content is sort of non-existent, because nobody really wants to fight a top end guild, so they just pretty much avoid all forms of just fighting in general, so they'll steer clear of it for the most part, which kind of sucks. And then if you're in one of the lesser guilds, everyone targets you because they want to stomp on a guild that is lesser than them. And that is kind of the culture of console, which is kind of shitty, and why I prefer PC's culture, because I think that for them it's still just about the fight. Realistically, I'm sure that thought process still happens on PC, but I feel like their culture is vastly more superior and far more willing to go the distance when it comes to setting up a fight for something. Whereas on console, there is no form of setting up a fight. If the guild issuing the 1v1 challenge is above the guild they are challenging, most likely the opposing guild that is receiving the challenge will not take the challenge whatsoever. It's pretty common that that's a thing that goes down. Most of the time, anybody that is issuing a 1v1 or even a 2v2 for that matter, or any team fight in general, or fight regardless, if they are the ones issuing it, most likely it will not be met with any kind of consideration. It'll just be an automatic denial, because if there's a risk a guild might lose on console, the ego is very much what runs the game. So because of that, they'll decline the 1v1. I see it happen all the time. And mind you, this is not just me coming out of nowhere and just making shit up. My entire Node War PvP career is documented on my channel, from when I first dipped my toes into PvP and Node Wars in a guild called, I think, Pure or Purification or some, I don't even remember what guild it was. It was some shit. And then I joined a bigger Node War guild, and then from there an even bigger one, and then now currently I am in the number one console PvP guild for Node Wars and Sieges. So I went from the bottom of pretty much like just a PvEer. I was just a grind bot and just making videos for, you know, grind zones and so on. And I wanted to get more involved in PvP, and then, you know, went from the bottom of the list of guilds that nobody's ever heard of to now I am where I am and the top guild in the game. So it's like I've been from both sections here. I've seen the low end and experienced the high end, and I can tell you that over the time that has passed, it has not gotten better. The culture of console has degraded so far down to the point where PvP is a luxury now. It is like, if you get to PvP, that is, you will consider yourself lucky. You have to consider yourself lucky if you get to PvP, because the higher you go in your career as a PvPer in this game, you will slowly realize that the fights come less and less and less till it is a grinding halt. And that goes for Node Wars, that goes for GVGs, 1v1s, or whatever. There's really nothing out there at the moment for PvP, and it kind of sucks. So going into this update here, pretty much in Korea they got this update. I'm not really sure what the whole reasoning was for this update. I assume it's to be, you know, make the game a bit more casual feeling and more kind of open to the whole, you know, casual player base, because that's been Pearl Abyss's #1 thing that they've been trying to do, is maintain a casual audience to where that they can have players maintain in the game, because that's their biggest flaw, right? Their biggest flaw is they can attract a ton of players to the game because everyone thinks the game looks cool, the combat's amazing, so on and so forth, right? But the thing that always happens is they can't maintain those players, and that is because they just don't find it fun whenever they get out of that theme park experience. As a new player, you start off as, you know, just this nobody. You're going through questing, you're getting this really theme parky vibe where you're going through all these quests, you're kind of learning about enhancing here and there with the Tuvala stuff and seasonals and everything. So everything's kind of handed to you, and not only that, it's relatively easy to kind of get gear whenever you're doing seasons, because you get up to, you know, all your pen Tuvala and stuff like that, and you get kind of to that quote unquote early game soft cap. And then whenever you're out of seasons and then you're out of the Olvia server too, after 30 days for the Olvia, you get thrown into the actual game, and it's an entirely different vibe. It is an entirely different game even, and a lot of players are culture shocked by it, because on season servers and Olvia servers, everything is rather friendly. Everything is rather like helpful. People are reaching out and all sorts of stuff, right? It's a very different game. Trust me. I like when I quit the game and I came back. This was a long time ago, but even back then, like, the culture was still the same concept. Like, Olvia servers, everybody was all happy, everyone's server chatting, everyone's talking to each other. It's like a literal community that's pretty wholesome. And then when a player steps out of that and then they get thrown into the actual game, it's a cesspool of nonsense. It's complete degeneracy left and right. You have people, you know, talking about real life problems in terms of like bringing that up as some sort of weapon. I see it on a regular basis where if somebody has any inclination of personal information on you, they will out you so fast in server chat. They'll talk about any disabilities you have. They'll talk about, you know, your family, things like that. It gets pretty ugly. It gets really, really ugly. And as a new player, you go from that wholesome experience to the real game where the degenerate players are. It's almost depressing. Like, I could see why players don't want to stick around, but that's not really like the main reason. The culture shock is there from that regard, but the real reason they don't maintain players is because it's like working a second job. Like, you have to do so much shit just to fucking get to a point in the game where you're happy and comfortable, where you can log in and not feel the weight of gear, feel the weight of making silver. Like, I had to hit like 680 gear score before I felt like I didn't have to play BDO as a second job. And that level of freedom was really nice. That's when I started to enjoy the game more, and I wanted to just, you know, go to PvP stuff, do node wars more, and so on and so forth. And then when I got to that point, that's when the game started to suck, because even though I was free of the burden of silver and having to grind for gear, a new burden arose, and it was finding PvP. So it's just a problem after a problem. So as a new player, you have to think about it, right? You go from this theme park experience with seasonals and Olvia, you have this wholesome community that you're a part of, and then you get thrown into the real community that's just absolutely shit and just completely ruins your entire like vision of the game and what you've experienced. And then on top of that, now you find out all the stuff that you need gear and like all this extra stuff. You need all pens, you got to get Kafras, which don't sell that often on the marketplace. You have to grind them, and then now you have to worry about people griefing you in your grind spot because now PvP is turned on. You're not very comfortable with PvP because you're a gearlet and you've never done it before, and you have this player farming you because, you know, you're a gearlet and you're a noob, and you know the karma system's in play, but like they can just go grind it back and then come back grief you again. Then you have the declaration system if you're in a guild that is deckable, and then, you know, you want to try and, you know, be left alone, and then you have this guild purposely targeting you because, you know, they can. It's like no player wants to be a part of that. And realistically, the easiest way to fix this shit is by providing players with a fucking outlet. All you have to do to fix PvP in this fucking game is provide an outlet for PvPers. And AOS is somewhat of an outlet, but it's not really that fun in my opinion. For me, I'm a large scale player. I enjoy large scale. That is what I like to do. It's my favorite thing in the entire game. 1v1s are cool. I like dueling too because I play warrior, so that's a fun thing too. But one of the biggest problems that I have is the RBF system. The red battlefield is awful. The team balancing is awful. The gear balancing is awful. Everything about it is just damn awful. I am so sick of being put on an RBF team that has absolutely no idea what they're doing, and then the enemy team has the entire top 1% player against me and they're just shitting all over my team. And then if you get into an RBF and people, you know, they like if they don't like your team, they'll just leave the RBF and then re-enter it over and over and over again until they get on a different team, until because there's no like lever busters, there's no punishment for it. So the outlets for PvP are minuscule as fuck, and node wars don't exist either because the culture on console is very political too. So there's 3 different alliances. You've got the Flow Alliance, and they're like little small 2-3 guild, whatever the hell they got going on. And then you have the Sacred Alliance, which we have I think 3 to 4 guilds. Was it Sac, Sacred, Arsha, and Conviction. So we have 4 guilds in our alliance. Then you have Nameless Alliance, and I lost count in how many fucking guilds they have in their alliance. So you have 3 alliances, and we have 0 issues. And by 0 issues, I mean like we have 0 issues in terms of PvP because none of us fight each other. Nobody wants to fight. Nameless doesn't want to fight Sacred. Flo doesn't want to fight fucking anybody that has the possibility of beating them. Nobody wants to fight. Everybody just wants to have their own respective region, respective nodes, and collect their money and just pretty much avoid any form of PvP that could potentially hurt them from a morale standpoint and an ego standpoint. And that goes for everybody. That's not a single guild is exempt from that. Every single guild is in that same regard. So these changes only like just perpetuate the problem of console PvP to where we're already not getting any fights in any facet whatsoever between GVG's open world, between node wars and siege. And then obviously there's no outlet because the red battlefield is pretty much empty on a regular basis. Real quick, I'm just gonna kind of check for a second here and just see how many people are in RBF. So yeah, we have 1 RBF going on. We have 1 RBF with 10 people. So, you know, to give you guys some perspective here, yeah, this is our community. Like this is where it's at. It sucks. It sucks. Like all of these castle ruins, Garmoth Nest, things like that, if the game was actually functional and very popular, and it actually had a nice decent what do you call it, like culture behind it, all of these RBFs would be filled. They should be, because that should be an outlet for PvPers, so that way they don't always look to open world. And if you provide PvPers an outlet, they won't go looking to grief the newer income players that are just sliding in trying to, you know, dip their feet in the actual game and enjoy it outside of that. If you provide me with an outlet for just open world PvP or large scale PvP, whatever, then I will never have to go to open world to look for a fight. I will just queue up for something, and that's a huge thing. And I'd like to point out as well, like just to put this out here, so like these are the decks we have currently. Like this is pretty much like, I mean, we're stomping everybody out. Like we're stomping everybody, and that's just what it is. And all of these that you see right here, every single fucking guild in this department is pretty much going to drop. The moment this update comes through, we are going to probably have maybe two out of these, maybe two. And Flow might keep theirs up, but I don't know. It depends. I saw that they made an announcement asking if they should take the deck down, so that's cool. Nameless might keep theirs up, but we rarely fight this guild anyway, so it wouldn't surprise me if they dropped it. And the rest of these guilds actually want zero smoke with us, except for Arsha. Arsha is pretty much always looking for fights, so Arsha probably will keep their deck up too, actually. But the rest of these guilds, Sound, Panic, and like, yeah, any of these, I don't know about this nonsense here, but like most of these are fucking trolls, like AFK, My Man, and whatever the fuck this nonsense is. These are just troll decks that have been up for years, and they just won't go down. So yeah, realistically, most of these decks are gonna go down, and we're gonna have even less fights out of everything. So yeah, that's just the top end though, you know. It could be a bit different. It is what it is. I don't know like what's gonna happen here, but PvP in Black Desert, I'm just gonna read this because I think this is an interesting thing. So PvP in Black Desert allows forced attacks, but disadvantages that come with it are said to be powerful. However, in any case of the one-sided war between guilds caused by conflicts in monster zones, it is also being utilized to kill opponents without any disadvantages. After a long period of consideration and confirmation of the situation, we have decided to exclude one-sided wars from the Black Desert system October 18th. Furthermore, related updates to alleviate the monster zone issue, which is one of the main causes of guild conflicts, will also apply in the long run. Now, the problem that I have with this is that they're giving us the Marnie realm change, right? Like the Marnie realm change is coming, and that's basically where you can sit in the Marnie realm for about 11 hours and grind. That would naturally fix this issue over grind spots and killing opponents in grind spots, because the Marnie realm is a solo server. You can go in there by yourself, grind freely, and not have any issues. That fixes the griefing, right? That fixes griefing altogether. So this deck system change makes virtually no sense on paper when you've already provided a different outlet to the problem. Now you're just creating another issue that I feel like makes no sense, and taking content away in already a content drought game from a console perspective. So that's just, again, my 2 cents with that regard. It even says right here that the usage of Marnie Realm will be improved, that it recharges after 1 hour, and of the use you can, another hour repeating the cycle. We expect that this change of the realm will help solve many issues related to monster zones, which it will, but the deck system is a whole different thing. So I guess just in conclusion here, PvP is probably going to be dead on console for a good while. There's not really going to be any decks. There's not going to be any open world fights. And my number one suggestion is I hope PA takes into consideration that instead of taking content away, provide actual content for PvPers. And I don't mean that War of Roses nonsense. Provide a daily outlet, a regulated outlet. Make RBF really good. In fact, cap it. I don't want to use my gear. I don't care about gear. Cap everything. If you make RBF capped, I would be happy. I would be completely happy. Not only that, but it would alleviate issues with your player base, right? It would also allow new players to dip their toes into PvP, not having to worry about gear. They don't have to worry about it, and they can just hop in there, have fun, goof around with classes, and then just log off the game. That could be your appeal to the casual player base that would alleviate all the issues of them always leaving and never coming back. At least if you have that casual outlet where players can join the game, play for an hour or two, and then log off, that will at least drive traffic and attention to the game, and that is completely okay. I would play RBF 24/7. I would play if it was capped all day, because then I wouldn't be mad if my enemy team has, like, you know, the players that have a million gear score, because it's capped. The node warrior or the RBF would be capped, so therefore I wouldn't have anything to blame other than my teammates just suck, which that's every game, right? You know, Smite, League of Legends, Call of Duty, whatever. You can't control your teammates. There's always going to be somebody that just you're going to get stuck with a team that's just not the greatest, but at least you yourself can do really well, carry, so on and so forth. So capping RBF would be a great way to actually provide an outlet to PvPers that are just looking to fight and dip their toes in the game, is PvP mechanics and systems. That would be lovely. But this change, do what you will with it, but I don't think this solves anything. I think this just creates more dead content, and it just obviously will now further the issues of people not having the ability to have an outlet for PvP, and that sucks. That sucks. I don't really like this change, but again, if PA will provide an outlet, there will be at least something that can change, and we'll have some positives. But let me know what you guys think of it. I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.